on this side of the big store building. And we cut them in half and sold half of them to Tampa Electric, and that was their service center initially. And later on, they built a new service center out close to Sun City Center. And at that time, we leased their old service center to General Telephone.
I think so, yes.
Because we had the deal set up that if they ever were going to move, we could buy the property back.
Shell one more in is where we're going.
Was your house purple when you lived there?
No. That house, we added the front porch to, and the back lean-to porch, which was a breakfast room and my room. And it had 2 bedrooms in the old main part. It had a fireplace and a kitchen. But we added the front porch home. But that had been belonged to the railroad, a section house, they call them. When they used to have the crews every so often along the train lines or railroad lines, where they would have a crew and they worked and maintained a certain section or so many miles of track. Well, there was a sawmill over on 301 just south of Sun City Center, just in Manatee County. And when they closed down the sawmill in the early 30s, they got rid of the section houses and all, and the man that had been running the sawmill for the man that owned it, they disposed of all the section houses. My dad bought one of them and brought it over here and added the front porch and the back room on, and that was our house for many years. And that particular man that was running the sawmill for the people, his last name was Robbins, and he is the one that built Robbins Lumber Company. That was the biggest, not necessarily sawmill. They did a lot of milling, but wood treatment plant, and they had 2 or 3 plants, and they were one of the biggest in the Southeast for many, many years. Trying to think. Well, I was living there with Mother and Dad, and they finally gave up and figured that I wasn't going to ever move or do anything else, so they moved back to the farmhouse, and that would have been sometime in the 50s.
They wanted you to get married, and you couldn't get married if you were living with them.
Whatever.
This is it. You know they're
At one time, this was not part of Ruskin. It was part of Gulf City, because there was no access to the mainland or to the other land from here. And where you see all of this mess now, that was built by a man who had his dredge out here. He used to dredge out in Tampa Bay and dredge up oyster shell that he used for road bed for highway construction all over this country. And he built a swimming pool and a skating rink and a restaurant and had a lot of boats and whatnot down here. And other than that, there wasn't much down here.
That sounds like a pretty good bit.
Mm-hmm.
Swimming pool and skating rink and all.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't. I mean, that's what you don't love.
What is it?
We're talking about.
That's just in a bend of the river right in here. And the man who was connected with the Bolita industry and whatnot, which was a gambling set up in the state of Florida, he was one of the kingpin men in the thing. And his older brother was one of the dons. But anyhow, he had the fish camp. And he had moved down here from Tampa, and I used to go down and make his Dago sauce, or his Italian sauce. for his spaghetti dinners that they used to have, usually every weekend or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
But that wasn't connected to the house in Ruskin or the farm or anything like that.
I think I was remembering the fish camp, and for some reason I was thinking that was your farmhouse.
No, Now, if we could have got, I don't think you can even figure that out anymore, because I think, unless it's right around here, but at one time in front of the swimming pool, skating rink, and restaurant, they had a pretty good sized pier. Mm-hmm. And you could stand on the pier and look straight across the river, and there was a gap in the mangroves. And this area here, where the main channel comes in, goes up here and bends and then goes on up toward Ruskin. And what we call the Ruskin Inlet comes into the river, up probably a mile up river. And the river then turns straight south. I mean east, excuse me. This is east and west this way. And goes under the river bridges and whatnot, a little further up. Well, if you went through that gap and you went to the shore on the other side, you'd be into our farm. But we had a half mile of the riverfront on the south shore. And then the south channel came in on the other side of the first big bunch of mangroves you hear, between here and Sand Key, which is a little island out here in the mouth of the river. It came in and wound around through the mangroves, and it went by a point straight out from where the old farmhouse was, where we had about a 250-foot or 300-foot dock from the land out to the mangroves in the middle of the river.
Is that the one y'all did with those cabbage palm?
Yeah, cabbage palm logs is what we use for posts. And of course nowadays you could not put a dock in there, but and there was a small channel, and even though that small is what we call a squash channel, but it went by a little small mangrove key that was in front of the farm. And that little channel along by that key was where we caught a lot of what we call small reds, but redfish that would usually be from 1.25 pounds, pound and a half, up to a little over 2 pounds in the fall. That was last year's spawn and whatnot. Nowadays, if a redfish is not at least 20 inches or whatever it is, you can't even keep them. And then if they're over a certain size, you can't keep them.
Yeah.
But the thing we liked about redfish was if we caught a big one, like if you caught a 10 or 12 pound red, Mother or Dad would clean it and just take the head off and, of course, scale it. But then you would leave it whole, and she would have a bed of rice in one of the blue granite metal roasting pans, that had a lid on it and whatnot. And she put in all the seasoning and everything, and baked that redfish, and your large red was good baked, not fried. But the small reds, about the size of a good sized mullet, they were
good fried.
Good. After supper, he didn't close the door well. I guess somebody's going to get it. Well,
yeah,
something.
The inside door's still open.
It's not the money.
Try to. That's a nice.
Okay.
Well, that is a nice one.
This is about where the old original shed was, going around. Yeah, we can go up through here. All of the area from here outward was just flat land where there had at one time been a oyster factory where they gathered oysters and canned them and whatnot.
So.
All right, you see the tall Australian pines over there?
Mm-hmm.
They're on what was part of our farm.
We can ride over there too. I mean,
Yeah, we can ride over to the farm. Let you
since
show
we're not
Wesley.
doing the boat, we can kind of ride
Yeah,
around.
we showed. We showed Lucy, but we hadn't showed Wesley that the farm.
What is that?
The
Nice.
farm.
Oh, okay. All right, well, let's see if we can get up here and see. I don't know if you can see there with all this mess. I don't think you can see the. All right, there's one of the docks right there. See where the poles are going out there?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and if we could get to where you can see the other shore, you can see the gap in the mangroves.
Yeah, right there.
Maybe here.
Right over there. Yeah.
All right, see the gap?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, directly straight through that gap is about where our farm started on the south shore and came down to a good little ways below all those trees that you see standing up above. Well, it was a half mile on the river. Now, the main channel of the river stays on this side of the mangroves and goes up and toward Ruskin. And the south channel actually came in closer to Sand Key on the further down on the mouth of the river and went up on the other side of those mangroves where the gap is.
Sailboats down
Or whatever. and they eventually sold off individually and all, but he had those, and there was a lot of other recreation type things up through there and all. I don't guess you can see the damn point here anywhere now.
Yeah, I think all of it's private now.
Well, we used to come out in the edge of the point, and a lot of times would ski out in this area a lot.
Hey, tell Taylor about you skiing across Tampa Bay right here, Poppie.
Did you notice the skyline of St. Petersburg from where we were at the...
Yes.
all right. From here, straight across the bay, 12 miles is what you were looking at.
Oh.
And so, one day, I just was full of it and felt real frisky. And so we started skiing, and I said, well, I want to make a long ski today. Let's ski to St. Petersburg. And so I was the only one that did it. And we got over there, and by the time I got over there and whatever, I felt like I was king of the hill. And they said something about, they gave me cigarettes out there without a jacket and whatnot. Where was it? They had words for him or something like that. And unfortunately, nobody said a damn word, and they finally walked off. And after everybody was gone, we loaded up the boat and went home.
Sounds like it worked out pretty good for you.
A place back.
Organization that ran Bolita in Florida for many years, and that's the fellow I was telling you about. And the ex-sheriff who probably got a lot of the money to buy this piece of land and the one across the road and various and sundry other things around the county probably came from the bag they used to take him once a week that came from the Bolita income. But he had bought this property. I don't know who owns it now or whatever happened to it. I never could feature them closing because this was a good sized camp, had some pretty good boat docks. They didn't do any service or it didn't have any takeout, but he had a launching ramp and I think there was dockage there for like 12 or 18 pretty good sized boats and all. Grown into the